The moment I stepped into my parents' house with Ethan beside me, everything I'd imagined evaporated. I never imagined that a simple dinner could feel like walking into a storm. I had pictured it differently in my head, laughter echoing through the dining room, polite conversations, a few jokes, maybe even a shared toast to the start of something new. The air was thick in a way I hadn't anticipated, charged with expectation, tradition, and something I couldn't quite name yet. Ethan's hand brushed mine as we walked up the front steps, the weight of it grounding me. He didn't say anything, just smiled softly, that quiet, steady smile that always reminded me why I loved him. I could feel the calm radiating off him, a stark contrast to the tension tightening in my chest. He didn't need to speak the words I was thinking, that my family might not be ready for him. Not really. That the world might never be ready for us. Door opened, and my father greeted us first, his handshake firm but distant. There was a pause, a subtle evaluation, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes that I hadn't noticed in years. He always wore that measured expression, the one that suggested he was calculating every interaction. My mother followed, hands still damp from some domestic task, her lips pressed together in a tight, practiced smile. She hugged me quickly, the kind of hug that was polite but brief, then turned to Ethan. Her eyes scanned him in a way that felt invasive, assessing, weighing something invisible. "Hi, Ethan," she said finally, her voice bright but carefully neutral. "It's so nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too, Mrs. Caldwell," he replied, his tone warm and unassuming, extending his hand. She hesitated for a heartbeat, just long enough for me to notice. That tiny pause carried a world of judgment, a subtle questioning of who he was, of whether he belonged in our carefully constructed world. I squeezed his hand reassuringly, but the tremor in my stomach didn't go away. I could feel him noticing it too, the slight tension in the air that only grew thicker as we stepped into the dining room. The table was immaculate, set with polished silverware and folded napkins, candles that hadn't been lit, flowers arranged just so. My mother always did everything with an eye for perfection, and tonight was no exception. It felt more like a stage than a home, and I realized quickly that every word, every smile, every movement would be measured, recorded, or judged, even if just by my own family. "Shall we sit?" my father said, gesturing toward the chairs. His voice carried a formal cadence that made the air feel heavier than it needed to. Ethan and I exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement that this dinner would not be like the casual evenings we shared with friends or at our own apartments. Here, we were under a microscope. We sat. Conversation began with small talk, the kind that fills gaps without really connecting people. Dad asked about work. Ethan answered politely, detailing his marketing campaigns, his clients, the long hours he put in to build his career. Mom smiled and nodded, occasionally glancing at me as though checking to see whether I approved of her reactions. I wanted to tell her it wasn't about approval. It was about acceptance, about recognizing that this man beside me was more than a visitor in our home. He was my choice, my life, my love. At first, the dialogue was harmless enough, but I could feel the subtle probing beneath her questions, the way she circled topics with soft insistence, testing boundaries. "So, Ethan, where are your parents from?" she asked casually, but the tone carried something else, curiosity tinged with something I didn't like. "Do you live in the city? It's getting so crowded these days, isn't it?" He answered with ease, deflecting the questions with calm politeness. That was one of the things I admired most about him. He didn't react with anger or defensiveness. He didn't show frustration, even when the questions felt loaded, like thinly veiled judgments. He simply answered, keeping his composure intact. But I could feel him retreating inwardly, shrinking in a way that broke my heart. My mother poured another glass of wine and laughed softly. "Maya's always had a thing for adventurous choices," she said, almost teasing, almost light. But the words landed heavy in the room. Ethan blinked at her, confusion flickering across his features. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" "Oh, just different from the usual," she replied, brushing it off with a laugh. "Not her normal type." Different? That word landed like a stone in the middle of the table. I wanted to disappear, to erase the moment before it could take root, but it was too late. Ethan's jaw tightened subtly, and I could feel my own hands gripping the table under the weight of unsaid words. I wanted to speak, to say something to protect him, to protect us. but my voice was trapped somewhere between fear and defiance. Dad tried to lighten the mood with a joke about work, about city life, about everything but the elephant in the room, but it didn't work. The tension had already taken hold. It was in the way my mother smiled too tightly, in the way she shifted in her seat, in the way Ethan's eyes darted toward me for reassurance. I excused myself under the pretense of checking on dessert. Ethan followed, his presence comforting in the narrow hallway. He whispered, "Do you want to leave?" "No," I said firmly. "If we leave now, she wins." He nodded, understanding. Then we finished the night together. Together? The word felt hollow at first, as though the universe were testing our courage. We returned to the table, only to find my mother showing my father something on her phone, her expression carefully neutral. "Maya," she said brightly, "did you see that TikTok about the girl who met her boyfriend's parents and it went horribly wrong?" I froze, my mind raced. "Why are you showing me this?" "Oh, just funny timing," she said, smiling. "People these days share everything, can you imagine?" Ethan's eyes darkened, and I noticed for the first time that my teenage cousin, Lily, was sitting in the corner with her phone angled just so, recording. She thought she was capturing a harmless moment, a memory to share with friends. But what she caught was raw tension, my mother's subtle microaggressions, Ethan's calm patience, my own nervous laughter trying to hold the evening together. We finished dinner in silence, the weight of unspoken words pressing down on every bite. My mother's smiles didn't reach her eyes, and my father's polite questions carried an edge of expectation that made me want to vanish. Ethan and I exchanged glances across the table, communicating without speaking. This was more than awkward conversation. This was a test of endurance, of loyalty, of love under pressure. After we left, I discovered the video had been uploaded to social media. Overnight. It exploded. Comments flooded in, thousands of people judging, critiquing, dissecting our interactions, assigning blame and assuming motives. Some sympathized with Ethan. Some condemned my mother. Others attacked me for allowing it to happen. I felt exposed in a way I had never experienced. My private life had been turned into public entertainment, dissected and shared with strangers who would never understand the nuances, the love, or the courage it took to sit at that table and remain composed. The next days were surreal. Messages came from friends and strangers alike. People shared the video, debated it, turned it into memes. My parents tried to manage the fallout, deleting posts and issuing vague apologies, but the internet doesn't forget, and it certainly doesn't forgive. Ethan stayed quiet for a while, not distant, but retreating into himself, processing the moment in his own way. I watched him, loving him more for his composure, yet aching because I could see the strain the evening had placed on him. It was like watching someone you loved carry a weight you wished you could lift, but couldn't. I called Lily in a panic, begging her to remove the video, but she told me it had already gone viral. Millions had seen it. Comments were ruthless, calling my mother racist, questioning Ethan's motives, speculating about my intentions. I felt as though the entire world had descended on that dinner, reducing our love story to a single moment taken out of context. By the end of that week, my parents were defensive and frustrated. My mother called me in tears, claiming I had ruined the family's reputation. I wanted to scream, to tell her that what she had done, what she had said, had already done that. But I stayed silent, knowing any confrontation would be used as further fuel for public scrutiny. And then there was Ethan. The man I loved more than anything had been reduced in the public eye to a character in someone else's story. I had never seen him like this before, quiet, thoughtful, hurt, yet determined. He told me softly that the internet's judgment didn't matter. But deep down, I could see the cracks in his patience, the silent pain that no viral video could ever fully capture. We didn't speak much that weekend. We exchanged messages, short and cautious, each of us grappling with the fallout in our own way. My parents tried to act normal when we visited again, but the tension lingered, an invisible scar across the dining room table. The smiles, the polite laughter, it all felt forced, hollowed out by the knowledge that the world had watched us struggle and judged us for it. 2 weeks later, I found Ethan sitting by the lake where we often went after work, alone, contemplative. He didn't look at me when I approached, and for a moment I wondered if I had lost him completely. Then he spoke, his voice low, careful. "I watched the video again," he said. I felt my stomach tighten, and he turned toward me finally, eyes heavy with emotion. "I realized something. I wasn't just meeting your parents that night. I was meeting the world." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to cry, part of me wanted to scream, and part of me wanted to run. All I could do was sit beside him in silence, feeling the weight of the world, the judgment, and the fragile threads of our love stretched to their limit. That was the moment I understood that our story had changed. The dinner wasn't just a dinner. It was a test, a viral event, a lesson in patience, courage, and the vulnerability of love under public scrutiny. And I knew, though I couldn't see exactly how yet, that the night was far from over.
The days after the dinner were strange, disorienting, and heavy. I had expected some tension. I knew meeting Maya's parents might be challenging, but I hadn't anticipated the whirlwind that would follow. The video of that night had gone viral, and suddenly, our private lives were no longer private. Every glance, every word, every subtle reaction from the dinner was now being judged by strangers, dissected and amplified in ways that made my stomach churn. I watched Maya wrestle with the comments, her hands trembling slightly as she scrolled through threads that were filled with judgment, speculation, and sometimes outright cruelty. People had already formed opinions about us, about her family, about our relationship, and none of it mattered to the truth. The world didn't know us. It only knew the moments someone else had captured. And the way those moments had been framed left us vulnerable, exposed in ways neither of us had anticipated. I felt anger, yes. I felt frustration. But more than that, I felt a responsibility. A responsibility to Maya, to the love we had built over 2 years, to the commitment we had made to each other. I couldn't control what the world thought, but I could control how I responded, how I carried myself, and how I supported her. That's what mattered. When she came over that evening, I could see it in her eyes, the exhaustion, the shame, the confusion. "I don't even know how to handle this," she admitted quietly, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't answer immediately. I just reached for her hand and held it, letting her know silently that we would face this together. She leaned against me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. "It's like everyone is judging every part of me," she whispered, "and I don't even know if I can forgive my family for putting me through this." I kissed the top of her head, holding her close. "You don't have to forgive them yet," I said softly. "You just have to be honest with yourself and with me. That's all that matters." She pulled back slightly, her eyes meeting mine. I could see the vulnerability, the rawness, the trust. I understood then how much pressure she was under, not just from her family but from herself. The expectations she carried, the need to make everyone happy, the fear of disappointing someone she loved, it was almost too much to bear. The next few days were a blur of messages, notifications, and online commentary. Friends reached out, some offering support, others questioning the situation, making assumptions that frustrated both of us. And all the while, the video continued to circulate, gaining views, likes, shares, each one a reminder that our private lives had become public property. I spent a long time thinking about my own reactions that night. The way I had stayed calm, polite, composed, was it strength or was it fear? Fear of conflict, fear of judgment, fear of confirming some stereotype or expectation. I realized that it was both. I had learned long ago to temper my emotions in situations where the stakes were high, but this was different. This wasn't a client meeting or a workplace negotiation. This was my life, my love, my future, and the weight of judgment was coming from every corner of the world. Maya and I tried to talk through the fallout, to process the emotions together. Sometimes we argued quietly, tension spilling over from stress and exhaustion. Other times we sat in silence, holding each other, letting the gravity of the situation wash over us. The love we shared was strong, but even the strongest love can feel fragile when the world is watching, critiquing, and amplifying every flaw. I thought about her parents often, about her mother's pauses, her subtle judgment, the way she had positioned herself in every interaction that night. I understood that their actions were likely guided by fear, by societal norms, by their own experiences and biases. But understanding didn't make it easier. It didn't erase the sting of being treated as an outsider, as someone who didn't belong. And yet, despite all of this, I found moments of clarity. I reminded myself of why I loved Maya, why I had chosen to commit to her, why I was willing to endure scrutiny and judgment. It wasn't about proving anyone else right or wrong. It wasn't about gaining approval from strangers on the internet. It was about the bond we shared, the life we were building together, and the courage to face the world as a united front. One evening, we decided to revisit the dinner scene in our own way. Not to dwell, not to relive it, but to confront it together. We sat down and spoke openly about the microaggressions, the pauses, the words that had carried hidden weight. I listened as she recounted her experience, the subtle nuances she had noticed that I might have missed. I shared my perspective, the way I had felt measured and judged, the way I had held back frustration to protect us both. Through that conversation, we began to see each other more clearly. We began to understand the depth of our shared resilience, the strength it took to endure public scrutiny, and the importance of mutual support. We recognized that our love wasn't defined by the judgment of strangers or the expectations of family. It was defined by our commitment to each other, our ability to communicate, and our willingness to confront discomfort head-on. The viral storm continued, of course. Clips were shared, reposted, and analyzed across social media platforms. Some comments were cruel, some sympathetic, some completely misinformed. But we learned to filter, to focus on the voices that mattered, the voices of those who knew us, who understood our story, who supported our love. I began to see a change in Maya as well. She became more assertive, more willing to speak her truth, more capable of setting boundaries with her family and with the world. And in turn, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper commitment to stand beside her, not just in private but in the public arena that our lives had unexpectedly become. There were moments of doubt, moments of fatigue, moments when I questioned whether the pressure was too great, whether the scrutiny would ever subside. But each time I returned to the same truth: our love, our connection, our shared resilience, these were not negotiable. These were the anchors in the storm. Weeks passed, and slowly the intensity of public attention began to wane, though not completely. The memory of that night, the lessons learned, the emotional toll remained. But it also left us stronger, more aware of each other's needs, more capable of navigating the complexities of family, society, and social media. I reflected often on the lessons of that dinner. I realized that meeting Maya's parents was never just about her family. It was about confronting societal expectations, testing the strength of our bond, and proving to ourselves that our love could withstand scrutiny and judgment. And in that realization, I found a quiet sense of victory, a sense of peace. Maya and I grew closer through the experience. We learned to communicate more openly, to confront uncomfortable truths, and to navigate the pressures of life in the public eye. We discovered the importance of empathy, patience, and unwavering support. And we understood that love, in its truest form, is not passive. It is active, resilient, and willing to endure challenges, no matter how public or private they may be. As we sat together one evening, reflecting on the journey, I realized that the viral dinner, the scrutiny, the judgment, none of it had diminished our bond. In fact, it had solidified it, proving that love is not defined by ease or comfort, but by endurance, understanding, and the courage to stand together in the face of adversity. And though the world had watched, judged, and dissected us, the truth remained ours alone. The love we shared, the commitment we had made, and the strength we drew from each other were beyond the reach of social media, beyond the influence of public opinion, and beyond the fleeting judgments of others. I knew then that whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever external pressures we would face, we had already passed the most difficult test. The night of the dinner, the viral storm, the family scrutiny, it had all been a trial, and we had endured it. together. And as I held Maya's hand, looking out at the quiet evening sky, I understood something vital. Love is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Every challenge, every misstep, every moment of judgment, it shapes us, strengthens us, and proves that the bonds we choose to nurture are the ones that endure. That night, as the world around us continued its endless churn, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. For Maya, for our love, for the strength we had discovered within ourselves and each other. And I knew, without a doubt, that whatever storms lay ahead, we would face them together, stronger, wiser, and unshakably committed to each other. The days after the viral storm blurred into one another. Maya and I had learned to navigate life under a microscope, and though the intensity of public attention had lessened, the echoes of that dinner still reverberated through every interaction, every conversation, and every thought we shared. We had spent weeks dissecting what had happened, trying to understand not only each other's feelings but also the motivations of those around us, our families, strangers online, even ourselves. It was during one quiet evening, weeks after the storm, that we found ourselves sitting in Maya's apartment, the soft glow of the lamp casting long shadows across the room. I watched her as she scrolled through her phone, her brows furrowed in concentration, the weight of recent events heavy in her expression. She had grown more cautious, more measured, more deliberate in how she presented herself, and yet there was an undeniable resilience in her eyes that had begun to shine through. "I can't believe how fast everything spiraled," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "It wasn't just the video, it was everything. The comments, the assumptions, the judgment. I didn't realize how much I cared about what people thought until all of it hit at once." I reached out, taking her hand in mine, and squeezed it gently. "It's okay," I said. "The world doesn't know the truth, Maya, but we do. That's what matters." She looked up at me, a small smile breaking through the tension in her features. "You're right, but it still hurts. It feels like every moment we shared that night was turned into some spectacle for everyone else." "I know," I replied, "and that's why we need to focus on us, on what we can control, on our love, our trust, our commitment. Everything else, it's noise." In the weeks that followed, we began to repair not only the cracks in our relationship caused by public scrutiny, but also the fractures that had always existed within our families. Maya's parents, for their part, were forced to confront their own biases and assumptions in ways they hadn't anticipated. The public attention had acted like a mirror, reflecting not just our experiences but theirs, forcing them to examine how their words and actions impacted the people they claimed to love. Her mother, initially defensive and dismissive, began to reach out more, cautiously at first, and then with genuine effort. She apologized for some of the comments and behaviors that had made me feel unwelcome, acknowledging the subtle prejudices that had shaped her perceptions. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't immediate, but it was a start, a recognition that relationships are not static, and that growth often comes through discomfort. Her father, too, became more introspective. He admitted, in quiet conversations with Maya, that he had underestimated the challenges we would face as a couple, and that he had let societal expectations cloud his judgment. It was a humbling realization, and one that helped to ease some of the tension that had lingered in the room for so long. For Maya and me, the healing process was both emotional and practical. We had to establish boundaries, not just with her family but also with the outside world. Social media had proven itself to be both a tool and a weapon, capable of connecting people while simultaneously exposing every vulnerability. We learned to step back, to filter, to prioritize our own well-being over the constant barrage of opinions. Through it all, our love deepened. The challenges we had faced, the scrutiny we had endured, and the emotional turbulence of those viral days had forged a connection stronger than either of us could have imagined. We discovered the power of communication, the importance of empathy, and the necessity of unwavering support in the face of adversity. One afternoon, we decided to revisit the neighborhood where the dinner had taken place. The streets, once familiar and comforting, now carried echoes of the past, memories of tension, anxiety, and the weight of judgment. But walking together, hand in hand, we began to reclaim the space. We spoke openly about our experiences, laughed at the absurdities, and acknowledged the growth that had come from those difficult moments. Maya turned to me with a soft smile. "Do you remember that moment by the lake?" she asked. "When you told me you felt like you were meeting the world that night?" I nodded. "I do, and I still feel it sometimes. But now it's different. Now it's not just about the world watching us. It's about us watching each other, supporting each other, growing together." Her hand found mine, fingers intertwining naturally. "I never thought a dinner could teach me so much," she said, her voice filled with quiet wonder. "About love, about patience, about standing up for ourselves." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "It wasn't just the dinner," I said. "It was everything that came after. The challenges, the judgments, the viral moments. They all forced us to confront who we are, what we value, and how far we're willing to go for each other." Over time, we began to rebuild our relationship with her parents. It wasn't immediate, and it wasn't always smooth. There were setbacks, moments of misunderstanding and lingering tension that needed careful navigation. But through honest conversation, consistent effort, and mutual respect, we began to foster a connection that was authentic, grounded, and genuine. Her mother, once rigid in her expectations, began to recognize the love and dedication we shared. She offered support in ways she hadn't before, celebrating our achievements and acknowledging the strength it took to endure public scrutiny. Her father, too, showed a newfound respect, not just for me but for Maya, for the choices she had made, and for the courage it took to stand by her convictions. For Maya and I, the experience became a testament to resilience. We learned that love is not merely a feeling but a practice, a commitment to understanding, patience, and unwavering support. We discovered that adversity, when faced together, can strengthen bonds rather than weaken them. And we realized that the judgments of the world, while sometimes painful, are ultimately fleeting compared to the enduring power of connection, trust, and shared experience. Months after that fateful dinner, we found ourselves sitting together on the porch of Maya's family home, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and rose. The house, once a source of tension, now felt warmer, more welcoming. The memories of the viral video lingered, but they no longer defined us. We had reclaimed our narrative, reshaping it with authenticity, love, and courage. Maya leaned her head against my shoulder and I wrapped my arm around her. "We survived it," she said softly, almost in disbelief. I kissed her forehead gently. "We did, and we grew because of it." Her parents joined us a little later, hesitant at first but with genuine smiles. Conversation flowed more easily than it ever had before. Laughter replaced tension, curiosity replaced judgment, and a sense of shared humanity bridged gaps that had once seemed insurmountable. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of awkwardness, moments when old patterns resurfaced. But those moments no longer held power over us. We approached them with patience, understanding, and the knowledge that growth is an ongoing process, not a single achievement. The viral video, once a source of anxiety and embarrassment, became a symbol of how far we had come. We no longer feared public scrutiny. Instead, we viewed it as a challenge we had met, a test of our love and resilience that we had passed together. The experience had taught us to prioritize our bond, to communicate openly, and to face adversity with courage and unity. Looking back, the dinner that had seemed like a disaster became a defining moment in our journey. It revealed weaknesses, exposed insecurities, and tested our patience. But it also revealed strengths in ourselves, in each other, and in the bonds we chose to nurture. We had faced the storm, endured the scrutiny, and emerged stronger, united, and unwavering. And in that truth, we found the deepest form of victory, the knowledge that love in its truest form can weather anything and that together we could face whatever the world might throw at us next.